The Zweihander is a very popular Ultra Greatsword that is used amongst the players and even some of the most beloved NPCs in this series. And what we're going to be doing is taking them all and ranking them from worst to best and how well they perform in PvE. Now there isn't really such thing as a bad Zweihander, every single one is extremely good. Just like the Claymore and just like the Guts' Greatsword. These are just very reliable weapons that you can't really go wrong with, but we are going to rank them based on how well they perform inside of their own game. Now there is only going to be 4 Zweihanders, so it is going to be a shorter video. Starting off at the bottom, we have the Dark Souls 3 Zweihander, which yes, it is not going to be a bad weapon, but compared to all of the other Zweihanders, it is going to be the least useful. Now, Ultra Greatswords in Dark Souls 3 are very solid weapon classes. They get some very high stagger potential, and their charged heavy attacks tend to be extremely good. A lot of them will end up getting a poking attack, of which when paired alongside the Leo Ring, you can just output some of the most damage in the entire game. Now, typically, Zweihanders will have 2 different things going for them. One, have a pretty unique moveset that does differentiate it to the other Ultra Greatswords. And most importantly, it's always the lightest one with the lowest requirements while still retaining some very nice damage and have some of the most range as well. It's not necessarily always going to be the highest damaging Ultra Greatsword, but the selling point is that it can perform just as well as almost all the other ones at much lower weight and requirements. Which unfortunately, the Dark Souls 3 Zweihander doesn't really get anything unique like that because the Astora's Greatsword is literally lighter, has less requirements, does more damage, and it arguably has the better weapon art as well. Which not to say that the Zweihander weapon art is bad at all. Stomp is really nice to have, which there are a few different types of Stomp, and I think the Zweihander Stomp is going to be the better one in my opinion. It is tend to get a faster animation than what you normally would get with the horizontal swipe or the vertical chop like you get with the Guts' Greatsword. And in terms of its moveset, it is just very similar to all of the other Ultra Greatswords. It doesn't really get anything unique. Where in some of the other games, it tends to get like a unique pancake attack or a unique thrusting attack, which this one actually does get both. It gets the overhead slam with one-handed heavy, and it gets the poking attack with a two-handed heavy. But so does like almost every other Ultra Greatsword, like the Astora's Greatsword and the Lothric Knight Greatsword, both of which are just going to outrange and outdamage this thing as well. Now, still it's going to have some uses because you can get it earlier than some of the other Ultra Greatswords, but some of the best ones can be accessible just a little bit afterwards anyway. Number 3, we have the Dark Souls 2 Zweihander. Now, Ultra Greatswords in this game are really good options. They get the highest poise damage, roughly averaging at around about 50. They tend to get some really high counter damage too, at about 130 each. And they're obviously just going to be really large, hard-hitting weapons, meaning that they're probably going to have very slow movesets and consume a lot of stamina, which in this game is going to be a lot easier to play through the game. Using faster movesets that consume less stamina, it's just going to be easy. And with how many times you can stack buffs, you can honestly output just as much DPS with things like hammers and rapiers as you could with some greatswords or ultra greatswords in this game. And just do it at a lot less weight, a lot less requirements, while consuming a lot less stamina. But that's not to say that these are not viable, these can still make for very good options. And for the Zweihander in particular, just like I mentioned for Dark Souls 3, it's going to have some nice range, it's going to have lower requirements and actually weigh a lot less than some of the other Ultra Greatswords. Although it is not going to be that much lighter than some of the other ones. The Drakewing Ultra Greatsword is tied for the lightest, also has very similar requirements, and it actually can output more damage with a dexterity type of build. And being that it actually does get a unique heavy attack that doubles as a projectile, it can actually just output way more damage too. Even looking at the Ivory King Greatsword, this one is also very light, but its unique ability of having an extended part to the two-handed moveset, it could also just serve as a better damaging option. But the Zweihander is still going to have its uses, because one, you can get it earlier on in the game, albeit it's not that early. It does have some of the highest base damage, and it does have very low requirements as well. So if you actually wanted to power sense Ultra Greatswords, the Zweihander is probably going to be the easiest weapon to do that with. But in terms of the movesets, there are some things that I like and others that I do not. The light attack combos are not too bad. The follow-up light attack is probably going to be the best thing about it. The light attack into the heavy attack combo can flow very nicely. The one-handed moveset is also very good. You get a nice downward slam with the heavy. Now, in terms of what I don't like about the moveset, the running attack is just terrible. It is way too long of an animation, doesn't do that good at damage. You basically just going to get hit every single time that you use it. The rolling attack doesn't really get that good of hit detection. It's like a weird horizontal swing that doesn't really come out that fast. But the follow-up light attack basically comes out almost instantly, so it can combo very nicely. But yeah, this Zweihander moveset is basically the exact same as almost all of the other Ultra Greatsword movesets. So although it does have some specific uses, it doesn't really do much to separate it to the other weapons in its class. Number 2, we have the Elden Ring Zweihander. Now, these are no longer classified as Ultra Greatswords, as they're now classified as Colossal Swords, and this weapon class is just extremely good. You get good variation of moveset, which sometimes horizontal swipes, downward swipes. You get good poking attacks with the crouching and rolling attack, which can come out extremely quick. You can honestly just beat enemies just by this attack alone. It also just gets amazing weapon skill options. If you're using things like Giant Hunt, Lion's Claw, or Vacuum Slice, the Colossal Swords are just going to be the best weapons to pair alongside with that. Now, as for the Zweihander in particular, just like it is for all the other games, it's just going to be a very light version of an Ultra Greatsword with very low requirements. And it is especially true for Elden Ring because only having a 19 strength requirement and weighing 15.5 units. There are other greatswords or even curved greatswords in this game that just get higher requirements and weigh more, but you just still retain the same Colossal Sword damage, which yes, it isn't going to outdamage some of the other Colossal Swords in this game. The greatsword is obviously going to get way more damage and get more range, but it still does get respectable damage, and it still gets the second most range in the class. But the main reason this is actually going to get at number 2 is because it gets a unique heavy attack compared to all of the other weapons in its class. It gets a poke, which poking attacks are just incredible. Piercing damage is probably the best damage type in this game. And poking attacks typically just end up just having really nice range and being really quick on top of that. And when paired alongside the Spirit Talisman, you can just output even more damage because counterattacks are insane in this game. And with how easy it is to spec into a charged heavy attack build, this thing could just output more damage than honestly all the other Colossal Swords when hitting with a counterattack. Now, this iteration of the Zweihander alongside the Dark Souls 3 version is going to scale better with dexterity than it is strength. So maybe that 19 strength requirement is probably going to be more wasted stats than anything. But if you did want to go into quality, it's still going to be viable. Even if you wanted to go heavy infused, it's still going to be good. So yeah, overall, it's not going to be the best weapon in its class, but with how easy it is to access, its range, its ease of use, and its good heavy attack potential, it definitely is going to make for one of the better Colossal Swords in this game. And at number 1, we have the Dark Souls 1 Zweihander. Surprise, surprise, this one is just one of the best weapons in the entire game. I consider it to be top 3. Now, Ultra Greatswords in this game are just really good. They tend to not be that much slower than like regular Greatswords, but they just get way more range, way more stacker potential, and just way more damage. Now, the Zweihander or the Guts' Greatswords are going to be the best one in class, and it is a debate as to which one is better. I did actually talk about the regular Guts' Greatsword in my other video, if you want to know my opinions on that, but me personally, I do prefer the regular Zweihander because it does have that little bit more range, it does weigh a little bit less, and in my opinion, it just gets the cooler heavy attack too, which is a nice downward slam, which is not going to get as much damage as a cool thrusting poking attack, but this actually does get the unique benefit of just pancaking enemies to the ground, meaning that they just have to go stand back up again every single time that you hit them with it, which yes, is only going to work against humanoid types of enemies, but there are a lot of humanoid enemies in this game, and this weapon just counters them completely. All the regular light attacks just stagger them with every single hit, and just having a heavy attack just squish them to the ground. Or it just makes it really good if you're fighting multiple enemies at once. It can just help you deal with them one at a time. And it kind of works as if like you're backstabbing an enemy. After you get the backstab, they have to stand back up again. And while they're standing back up, they're just like open to more hits. It just works the exact same way. And the fact that you can do all this amazing damage, have this amazing stagger potential with this insane range, while only weighing 10 units and having a 24 strength requirement, is just absurd. And best of all yet, you get this weapon right at the beginning of the game. Like literally at Firelink Shrine, you can just go run to the graveyard, pick it up, and you instantly have one of the best weapons, if not the best weapon in the entire game. Anyway, that concludes the list. Another one is now completed. Let me know what your opinions are down below in the comments. And as always, please do like and subscribe. The next ranking video will most likely be about the Twin Blades. I'm not sure if I end up streaming a marathon about that. By the time this video is out, I'm probably going to be doing a level 1 marathon, so definitely check me out on Twitch. But yeah, see you guys in the next one. Bye.